Hey there! So Fabric is a complex product. It has multiple items inside, and finding the proper option or proper setting in Fabric UI might be challenging, especially at first when you are just starting out with Fabric. And in this video, I will give you a quick tour over Fabric UI just to help you get started. So let's move on. Alright, so Fabric UI. And now, at the beginning, most of your interaction with Fabric will be done through web browser, through Fabric portal. It might change later as you become more familiar with Fabric, especially when you connect your workspace to Git, to a source control repository, which means that you'll be able to work with just files with any tool you want, like VS Code. But that will come later. At the beginning, web browser and Fabric portal is the way to go. And that's what I will focus on today. Alright, so first of all, how to log in, how to connect to Fabric portal. And you might be confused because there are multiple URLs, web addresses you can use to connect. And in the previous episode, I showed you this app, Power BI com site. And actually, let's start with this one. So you can still use this address. It will work even though it has Power BI in the name. And the reason is that in the past, Power BI was a separate product before Fabric even existed. But later, when Fabric came out, Power BI was incorporated into Fabric. It is one of the experiences or workloads without Fabric. But just to keep things consistent, this old URL, app.powerbi.com, it still works. It allows you to log in to this combined UI that combines Power BI and Fabric stuff. And once you open this website in a browser, well, you will have to log in by providing your email account. So actually, let me log in as my Fabric Learn account. And let's see how the UI looks like. And later on, I will compare it with a different method. And there you go. This is your Fabric portal or Power BI portal. That doesn't really matter. Within this stuff that you can see on the screen, you can develop both Power BI stuff and Fabric items. And please note that in the bottom left corner here, you can see this Power BI experience that is being selected. And if I expand it, you will see two of them. Two of them exist, Power BI and Fabric. And basically, that's the way you can use to choose how the UI should look like, which items should be highlighted or which development area should be made available for you. Now, it doesn't switch the UI completely, because I can go back and forth whenever I want. It just modifies the UI layout depending on the task of activities you want to use. If you want to work with Power BI, then probably you will go with this one. If you want to work with Fabric, this one is a way to go, right? But they are not mutually exclusive. If you want, you can use this Fabric experience and still develop with Power BI. And the opposite, with Power BI experience turned on, you can work with Fabric. So that's the difference, but not that big. Now, apart from this app.powerbi.com, we have yet another address you could use that has Fabric in the name, namely app.fabric.microsoft.com. And actually, let me use this one. So that's a new address, this app.fabric.microsoft.com. And again, you have to log in. Take a note that this time we've got a different icon, no longer Power BI one, but a Fabric icon. And again, let me log in as my Fabric Learn user. And we should land basically in the same interface, in the same UI that we opened using this app.powerbi.com address. So it's the same stuff. I've got a different size, so that's why it flicks. All right, now it's better. See? Absolutely no difference. It's the same stuff. And in both versions, I can split or I can switch to Power BI if I want. Still the same stuff. And if you take a closer look, you will see this experience equal to Power BI or Fabric in the URL. That indicates what you have chosen in this experience switcher. So to summarize, you can use any of those URLs. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you to choose which one you want to use. All right, so let me close one of them. And let's move on with the UI. So as you can see, it is a web UI, right? You access it through a web browser. And we already talked about this experience switcher. And now, in the past, there were more experiences available here. So we had Power BI, but instead of this Fabric unified experience, we had multiples like data warehousing, data factory, data science, and so on. Now, they have been combined into a single Fabric experience, which means that in some learning materials, you can still see some options that no longer exist. And actually, that's the case about the whole UI. It changes, it evolves. New things appear on various elements of the UI. Some of them change the name or even are completely removed. So that's just how it works. So be prepared that some of the tutorials might not reflect the actual state of the UI. All right, so let's move on with the UI. In the top right corner of the UI, you will see a typical area with some settings, notifications, and user. Important thing for you, if you use a trial capacity, is this information that tells you how many days left you have to play around with free trial without paying for it. In my case, it's almost a month. Then you would see some notifications here. For example, when you create new item in Fabric, or in case of any errors, some notification will pop up here. Just like in Azure portal, the same concept is applied. Then we've got various settings. And now, at this moment, many of them are not that important, so we'll skip them. I just want you to know where you can find those stuff. What is really important though is this one, manage connection and gateways, because that's the place where you can find all the connections that were defined in your Fabric. And you can see on my screen that I have quite a lot of them of different types. And connection is simple, well, connection, right? Like a linked service in Data Factory. It identifies some item to which you want to connect, either to read or write data. And now, the thing is that this view might become cluttered very, very easily. Because when you will be working with Fabric, you will create a lot of those connections. And if you are not organizing them properly, if you're not giving them proper names, you will have a complete mess here. Like I do have in my case, because I wasn't paying attention, to be honest. So what I will do in one of future episodes, I will show you how you can make it a little bit more organized, how to use some naming convention, so finding and reusing connections would be easier. Then we've got some gateways that are important when you want to connect to secured networks. For example, to on-premises network when your data lives. But we'll cover that later. Important thing is that connections, you can find them here. So you have to go to this gear icon and then manage connections and gateways. And one important option here is admin portal, which contains the most important settings about your Fabric instance. And now depending on your permissions, the list here might contain a different number of items. In my case, when I'm logged in as just a regular user, I have very limited list of things I could change. And that's fine, because normal user will not be playing around with admin level settings. But let me show you how it changes when I log in as me, as Piotr, who is the admin of the whole Fabric. So let me actually sign out and let me sign in again, but as a different user. And please note that it doesn't really matter which URL I choose, whether it's apppowerbi.com or this appfabric.microsoft.com. Both of them will lead you to the same UI. All right, so let me log in. There you go. And again, let's go into this admin portal. So admin portal, and see how many more changes I can see as an admin. In your case, usually you will not have access to them, so you might not bother at all, unless you are admin and have administrative permissions. But if there is some setting that you might need to choose, that's the place where you will find it, in the admin portal. Alright, so let me switch back to my Fabric Learn user, because I don't like to work using a user with this which is highly privileged, because if I made a mistake, some bad things might happen. And I showed it already. To log out or to sign out, you would have to go to this to this profile, just click on it, and then you've got this sign out options, right? No brainer. Please note that in this place, also because my user, me, I don't have trial enabled, I could start a trial. And I'm pretty sure that it was also the same place where I could extend my trial by another 6 days. I don't remember exactly if it was this one, but I think it was. Anyway, let me sign out. Let me log in again as my Fabric Learn user. Yes, please. And let's continue with exploring Fabric UI. Alright, so these two things that I just covered, this experience switcher in the bottom left corner and those settings, notifications, and your profile in the upper right, they are static. They are always there, no matter what other options you choose. Then, on the left-hand side here, you will see a list of options that might change depending on what you're doing. And actually, let me switch to Fabric, because we will be working with Fabric. And by the way, did you notice that the list of options here changed? Because this view is targeted for Fabric developers. And here it is for Power BI stuff, right? But we are focusing on Fabric, so let's use this one. All right. So starting from the top, home is exactly what you might expect from it, right? It's your starting place. And here you can create either new workspace, and just to recap, a workspace is your working area where you will be creating various items like lakehouses, warehouses, pipelines, and so on. Then, for a workspace, you can create something called task flow. And here we've got different templates of task flows we could use. Alright, but what is a task flow? So actually, let me jump to a specific workspace, because I created this Fabric course one. That's the workspace in context of which we'll be recording this course. And please note that here we have an indication which workspace are we in this Fabric course one. And this task flow, well, I don't I didn't create it for this workspace. So you can see that this part in the top is empty. So I could create a task flow from one of those templates. Alright, but what they are? So basically, task flow is a kind of a guidance from Microsoft how you can organize your processing within Fabric to achieve one of commonly used patterns. For example, you have some general pattern, general task flow. You might have the one that follows medallion architecture. You have something for analyzing events and so on. And let's choose medallion architecture because that's quite commonly used one. And let's see what it does. Alright, and what you can see here in this task flow, in this stuff, is how Microsoft envisions the processing that will result in implementing this medallion architecture. But please note that it is just a suggestion, you don't have to follow it. But if you are just getting started, it might give you a clue how it might look like. And please note that they start with data ingestion, and they split this into two types of data ingestion, for high volume data and low volume data. And in both cases, whenever you click on a specific task from your task flow, you will see recommended items from Fabric that you could use to achieve specific goal. And for example, for this high volume data ingestion, you could use data pipelines or event stream, right? While for low volume data ingestion, they say, in this case, data flow gen 2, notebook or Spark job definition is a way to go. You don't have to follow those guidelines, but because there is a lot of items within Fabric, many of which overlap with the functionality, you could use it as a kind of a guidance how you can implement a specific phase. And the same applies for every task. For example, the next step in our task flow would be to store this ingested data somewhere in this bronze layer. And here they say, well, you could use either lakehouse or warehouse to store your data. It's up to you to decide which one of those two will work for you, but at least these are the recommended items. So that's what task flow is. So you can use it as a kind of a guidance or documentation. But please note that it doesn't generate the code for you. No, it just shows the general process. And you can have one task flow per workspace, and you can change it at any time. So that's what task flow is. Kind of useful feature, especially if you're getting started. But let's get back to Home tab here. So those are the different task flows, right? Then you've got links to some documentation that will give you some more knowledge about specific items within Fabric. Then this one is quite nice because it gives you all the items, Fabric items, that you've been using recently, right? And they are split into various categories like those workspaces, and you can see that I have multiple of them. Then items, and you can also use favorites. You can mark some item as a favorite one. And those favorite tabs, it might be useful when you're getting more and more Fabric items, and finding the proper one is not that easy anymore. Or maybe you are just working primarily with Lakehouse and data pipeline, and you want to have a quick way to find it. So that's the list of recent items you've been working with. And actually, depending on the item that you choose, the middle part, this one, the main canvas, it changes. Because it shows all the data, all the information and the options that are valid in scope of a specific item. So let me give you an example. So let me open this sample lakehouse, which is of a lakehouse type. And now let's ignore the fact that I didn't talk about lake houses yet, right? You might not know what they are. At this moment, this is fine. I just want to show you that the UI changes because we chose this lake house thing. The UI changed, and now it displays various options that make sense in context of this lake house. That's the interface that we can use to create new stuff within the lake house. For example, here we can take a look at the preview of this green trip data table, which is like here, right? And please note that on the left hand side, this sample lakehouse and my Fabric workspace appeared, because that's the place where recently used or opened Fabric items will pop up. So you can later quite easily go back to them without going through various other screens. Alright, so let me open some other item just to show you how the UI changes. For example, this semantic model, and again, let's ignore what it is, right? Some data flow, and the UI changes, completely different set of options. And now, the thing is that depending on the item type, a look and feel might be a bit different. For example, in case of data flows, if I try to go back to some other part of the Fabric UI, it will ask me, sorry, you cannot go there. You have to close your data flow first before you can leave it, which we didn't have in case of lake houses or workspaces. So sometimes you have to do something extra, and to close this data flow, we've got this close button, right? So you have to, yes, I want to close it, please. And now I can go to the Home tab and choose some other item. So let's take a look at some notebook. And again, UI changes. We've got those cells inside which we can write our Spark code or SQL code. Let's skip the tour now. I don't want to do this right now. We have some, or I have some real-time dashboard that shows, as you can guess, some data, if I had anything defined in this view. And the same story is for remaining items. So the main part of the UI, it adapts. It changes to the context of the item that you have currently opened. And those recently opened items you will find here. Alright, so let's move on. So we covered this home area, workspace as well. If you have a lot of workspaces within your Fabric tenant, that's the way you can easily switch them, right? Then, a very important part of the UI, this create button. So, when you're working with Fabric, you want to create new objects, like those pipelines, lake houses, event streams, and so on. And that's the place, or that's the one of the places in which you can create them. And in this view, various items are organized by workloads. So you have some stuff for data engineering, some for data factory, data science, warehouses, and so on. And please note that right now I'm in my DP700 preparation workspace, which is not the one inside which I want to create my stuff. So let me make sure that I'm in a proper workspace. In this Fabric course one here. Here is where I want to create new items. And please note that here we also have this new item button, right? Which we could use. A different experience, but the goal is the same, to allow us to create new Fabric items. But in this view, those items are organized in a different way. They are split based on what we want to do with the data. So here we've got all the options that are used to get the data, while below we've got something for storing the data, something for data preparation, and so on, right? So there are multiple ways you could use to achieve the same goal. So let's say I want to create a new lakehouse, but instead of using this option, let me go with this create button. And here, yes, I want to create a new lakehouse. And now, because Fabric is a software as a service type of a solution, which means that provisioning new items should be easy. You shouldn't have to spend a lot of time on configuring them. So in this case, what you need to do is just to give a name to your lakehouse. Let me call it sample lakehouse, and let's create it. And now behind the scenes, Fabric is creating this lakehouse. And I know that you might not know what a lakehouse is. That's fine. I just want to show you the way how to create new items. And let's populate this lakehouse with some sample data, so I would have something to show you. So yes, let's start with sample data. And we have some samples to use. And actually, let's use this retail data model from white word importers. That's fine. And please note that we got some notifications that popped up. The first one was when the lakehouse was created, here. Or actually, this one is that SQL endpoint was created. And the second one is that Fabric is adding right now some sample data to our lakehouse. And it finished, right? So let me clear those notifications. Yes, please. Yes, let's close all those options. And my lakehouse has some sample data I could use to play around with it. And right now, Fabric is trying to load this, in this case, dimension city, whatever this is, and show us the data. Cool, right? Now, the thing is that whenever we create some item, or actually, if we go back to our workspace, to my Fabric course workspace, alright, so yeah. In the workspace view, you will see all the items that exist within this workspace. What I had to do was to close the view on the one of the task flows. And please note that what I did was to create this sample lakehouse only. But what Fabric did under the hood was that it created this SQL Analytics endpoint and semantic model automatically with the same names, which might be very confusing. And why? Let me show it to you. So let me open this SQL endpoint. Alright, let's go back to my workspace. And let's open semantic model. Alright, now let's ignore the fact that we don't know what they are. What I want to show you is that here, on the list of recently used objects, you will find those three sample lakehouses, right? The same names in all cases with just different icons. And the thing is that those two, they have very similar icons. Both of them are blue, those houses with some additional details. And very often, at least at the beginning, you will click the wrong one. Let's say you want to go to the lake house. So which one do you want? Should you choose? This one or this one, right? In many cases, you will choose the wrong one. So is this one? Yeah, that's the one. And this one is the endpoint, or the other way around, right? Which means that you will have to get familiar with those icons just to make sure that you click on the proper item. And please note that as we go with Fabric, more and more items are added to our list, right? So actually, let's try to to open some other item, let's say this real-time dashboard. Alright, it has some errors, that's fine. Let's go to some other object, this warehouse. Alright, let's open it. Let's move on with some notebook. It has been opened. Let's move on with, I don't know, this data flow. And we hit the limit because I opened too many Fabric items at the same time. And UI is saying, sorry, you have to close something to be open to a different item. And right now there's a limit of 10 items that can be opened at the same time. So I'm not able to open this data flow. I have to close something first. And how to close it? And the simplest way is to go to our list on the left hand side and just click this X button just to free some space. And once we did this, you should be able to open yet another Fabric item, like in this case. So please remember that if you are trying to open too many items at the same time, you will hit the limit. Alright, so we covered those objects, and actually let me create, let's say, a warehouse, sample warehouse. Because starting with Fabric with an empty object is not that helpful when you want to just learn about this feature. And having the possibility of creating some object with the data already loaded is really cool. Like we did with a lake house. Right now I'm creating this sample warehouse, which is loading it with some sample data. Hopefully it will work. And actually, let me try to do the same. Let's create yet another sample warehouse, another warehouse, and see what will happen. Alright, it is being created. But what you will unfortunately experience in your journey with Fabric UI is that from time to time, oh yeah, we got it. Something went wrong with some JSON message that another user operation is already running, wait a few minutes and then refresh and try again. Yeah, so you will hit those errors here and there. UI is bugged, unfortunately. Many times you will click on something and there will be no response at all. So you will not be sure if something is happening at the background or not. So you'll click again and again, and then you might have some issues that, like here, some operation is already running, right? So that's something you have to learn living with, right? Hopefully in time this will improve. The second thing with those error messages is that many times they are completely useless. In this case, it at least tells me what is happening, right? And what I should do to make it work. But more times than it should, it just gives you something went wrong, bad request, goodbye. No information about what was the root cause of the issue. And then you just need to guess if something did happen or not. But that's how the UI works. Alright, so be prepared to be patient with the UI, right? It is still being developed. Alright, so let's move on. We've got one lake, or one lake catalog to be more precise. And that's a place where you will see all your Fabric items here, right? Not your data, not your tables, but Fabric items. And the nice part about it that it is unified in a single place. And then with every item, you can work with it. And depending on permissions you have on specific item, you could, for example, modify permissions to specific item, or see what data it uses, see some monitoring information about this stuff, or when it was used the last time, if it is used at all, maybe not. And then it might be a good idea just to remove it. Then we've got this monitor tab, and that will gather various activities from your whole Fabric instance, right? And it will be gathered here in this single monitoring tab, where you could analyze what is happening with your Fabric. Then we've got real-time hub. That is your... Oh, come on, get started. That is your place for working with real-time data, with streaming data. That's your main point of start. And now, below this real-time, we've got this line that separates the main part of the UI, which is more or less static, with the list of those recently accessed items. And sometimes you'll notice that, hey, the option that was available here, it disappeared. Now it is still there, you just need to click those 3 dots and it will be there. For example, this browse or workloads. So let's move on to the workloads option. So here you've got information about various workloads that are available within Fabric, like those data engineering, data factory, data science, warehouses, and so on. And if you click on any of them, you can just learn more about this specific area of Fabric in this unified place. So it shows you which items are usually combined with a specific workload, and then you would have some learning materials, right? How to work with it, or how to create a sample in this case, or open a documentation that shows you what a lake house is, right? So that might be your starting point about learning about specific Fabric item. Alright, and that's pretty much about the UI. So the most important stuff is that... Oh, one more thing I forgot about. If you, let's say, don't want to have this monitor tab showed on this part of the screen, you can unpin it. Right, just right click on it and unpin. It will disappear, and it will make space for other options that might be hidden under those 3 dots. So you can customize this part of the UI. Alright, and basically that's it. So let me summarize this. So guys, the main user interface for you when working with Fabric will be this Fabric portal that is accessible through web browser. And to log in, you just need to use this app.powerbi.com URL or appfabricmicrosoft.com. It doesn't really matter which one you choose, because both of them will land you in the same portal. Then, depending on the Fabric item you are working with, the middle part of the screen, the biggest one, will change. It will adapt and adjust to the item you chose, right? But there are some areas in the UI that remain static, like this: experience switcher or settings, notifications, your profile. And on the left hand side, we've got those various shortcuts to different areas of Fabric and the list of recently used items. And hopefully this will give you a clue how to use the UI, how to find various things. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Take care.